There's a certain type of person you meet in life who doesn't take your money, doesn't steal your things, doesn't scream at you, and doesn't leave any visible bruises. But somehow, after every interaction with them, you feel drained, confused, guilty, and strangely responsible for their happiness. These are the people who use you emotionally. They don't break you with violence, they break you with need. And the worst part is this: they never have to ask for anything directly. They make you offer it. Your time, your attention, your emotional support, your energy, your life. It starts quietly. They tell you how no one understands them, how everyone always leaves, how you're the only one who truly gets it. And at first you feel special, chosen, important. But that feeling doesn't last, because emotional users don't pick you for your strength. They pick you for your softness. They pick you because you won't say no, because your empathy is easy to hijack, because guilt works on you, because you're the type of person who tries to heal others even when you're the one bleeding. People who use others emotionally are masters of the invisible pull. They don't tell you help me. They make you feel like a terrible person if you don't. And that's the psychology behind their power. You don't notice the moment you start carrying their pain. You don't notice the moment you become responsible for their mood. You don't notice the moment you stop living your own life and start living around their emotional needs. It always begins with a story that makes you care, a wound that makes you soften, a confession that makes you want to protect them. But emotional users don't want protection. They want possession. They aren't looking for a partner, a friend, or a confidant. They are looking for an emotional anchor they can cling to and drain whenever they feel empty. And in modern society, where loneliness is a currency and vulnerability is a weapon, this dynamic is more common than ever. The first sign you're dealing with someone who uses you emotionally is simple, but painful to accept. Your feelings always shrink, so theirs can expand. Your needs always fade, so theirs can dominate. Your life starts bending around the shape of their chaos. And you tell yourself, I'm just helping. But deep down, you know the truth. You're not helping. You're being harvested. Emotional users don't want your advice. They want your attention. They want your sympathy. They want your emotional labor. They want the warm, steady feeling of being held up by someone else's strength. And once they know you'll give it, they never stop taking. They don't start by taking from you. They start by studying you. Emotional users are psychologists without a degree. They watch how you react to sadness, how quickly you comfort someone, how deeply you feel guilt, and how much responsibility you take for other people's emotions. They map out your emotional weak points the same way a thief studies which window is easiest to break. And the moment they understand what you crave, what you fear, what you long to protect, they begin their slow, silent invasion. They make you feel needed, not loved, needed. Because feeling needed activates something primal in us. It makes us feel important, irreplaceable, valuable. Emotional users weaponize that sensation. They give you small doses of vulnerability, just enough to hook you, just enough to make you believe you are the only one who can help them, fix them, lift them, save them. It's never accidental. It's never innocent. They tell you stories about how everyone else abandoned them, betrayed them, misunderstood them. They paint themselves as the tragic character in a movie, where you are the hero destined to rescue them. And once you accept that role, once you step willingly into that script, you're trapped. Because now every time they suffer, it becomes your responsibility. Every time they break down, you feel guilty. Every time they fail, you feel like you didn't support enough. They don't need chains to control you. Your empathy is the leash. And emotional users manipulate through rhythms: push, pull, warmth, coldness, validation, silence. They message you intensely for days, making you feel special, chosen, then suddenly disappear, leaving you confused and anxious. This is not random. This is conditioning. The sudden withdrawal triggers insecurity. Your mind starts to panic, wondering what you did wrong. You replay every conversation, every moment. You feel the urge to reach out, to repair, to fix the vibe. And when you finally do, they return with a half-hearted explanation that leaves you relieved but still unsettled. That's how they teach you to chase them. Then they escalate. They begin to test how much you are willing to sacrifice. Emotional users love to see you cancel plans, go out of your way, lose sleep, drain your energy all for their comfort. They measure your devotion by how much you give up for them. And when they realize you're willing to give everything, they start giving nothing. You become their emotional battery plugged in, constantly charging someone who never recharges you. What's worse is the way they twist the narrative. When they hurt you, they make you feel dramatic. When they neglect you, they make you feel needy. When they take advantage of you, they make you feel too sensitive. But the truth is simple. You're not the problem. You're the resource. Emotional users don't love your soul, they love what your soul can do for them. And deep down, they know exactly what they're doing. There comes a moment, subtle, almost invisible, when someone who uses you emotionally decides that your purpose in their life has shifted. At first, you were the source of comfort, the listener, the fixer. But now, you are the resource. And resources are meant to be mined. This is the part most people never notice, because it doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like affection. It feels like connection. It feels like finally being needed. And that's exactly why it works. Emotional users don't take from you violently. They take from you softly. They don't storm the gates, they walk through the front door because you left it open for them. Their strategy begins with creating emotional imbalance. They share their wounds, their traumas, their fears, and you respond with empathy. You give a little more of your time, a little more of your energy, a little more of your mind, and then, gradually, they start responding less to your emotions and more to their own. They talk, you listen, they need, you provide, they collapse, you stabilize. The relationship becomes lopsided, so slowly you barely notice the shift. 1 month you are supporting each other. The next month, you are carrying someone who never even learned how to walk emotionally. And then one day, you're holding all their weight while they stand on your shoulders. That is the psychological mechanism behind emotional extraction. The moment they teach you to stop expecting anything back, they reward you with affection right after you help them and withdraw when you need help. It feels accidental, but it's deliberate. It conditions you like a behavioral experiment, positive reinforcement followed by subtle deprivation. You start trying harder. You give more. You stretch your patience, your compassion, your emotional bandwidth until you're exhausted. But exhaustion is not a problem for an emotional user. In fact, that's their ideal scenario. Because exhausted people are easier to control. Exhausted people stop asking for reciprocity. Exhausted people stay. And deep down, emotional users know you are loyal. They know you fear losing the connection. They know you don't want to be the cold one. And they weaponize that. The darkest part. They often believe they care about you. They don't see themselves as users. To them, they're just going through something, and you're the one who understands. But human connection becomes parasitic the moment one side grows while the other collapses. And emotional users always, inevitably, grow on the pieces they take from you. The tragedy is not that they take from you. The tragedy is that they convince you that giving is the only way to be loved. And as a result, you stay hoping that one day they will finally see you. But emotional users rarely look at the person holding them up. They only look at the next emotional high they need to survive. There comes a moment, quiet, sudden, almost embarrassing, when something inside you stops. A realization so sharp, it feels like a slow cut across the mind. You finally notice that every conversation with them leaves you drained. Every favor you do for them is one-sided. Every emotional confession they make pulls you deeper into their world, while they never once step into yours. You start replaying old moments, and suddenly everything looks different. You remember how they would disappear the moments you needed help, even though you were always available for them. You remember the way they would vent for hours, dumping all their pain on you. But whenever you tried to share something real, they would deflect, minimize, or subtly make it about themselves. You remember hearing them say, "You're literally the only one I trust." Yet they never shared anything that required trust, only things that required your emotional energy. And then it hits you. They didn't want you. They wanted your capacity to carry them. This is the psychology of emotional users. What makes them so dangerous is that they're not always malicious. Many don't even realize what they're doing. They aren't plotting. They aren't calculating. They aren't evil masterminds. They're simply people who learned long ago that emotions are currency, and other people pay the cost. They approach relationships not as connections, but as utilities. They don't ask themselves, "How can I show up here?" They ask, often unconsciously, "What can I extract from this person emotionally? What emptiness can they fill for me today?" And that's why you don't notice it at first, because they come to you wrapped in softness, vulnerability, gentleness. They present themselves as misunderstood, fragile, exhausted by life, and you, being naturally sympathetic, step into the role they need. The caretaker, the healer, the stabilizer. But emotional users don't want healing. They want a permanent emotional shelter. They want someone to unload on, someone to comfort them, someone to anchor them, without ever offering the same in return. And the longer you stay connected to someone like this, the more you feel a strange internal shift. You begin shrinking. Your needs become secondary. Your boundaries blur. Your emotions become quiet. Your life bends around theirs. Then, once they've drained everything they came for, a terrifying pattern begins. They grow distant. They become irritated by the same attentiveness they once depended on. They complain that you're too much, even though you gave them everything they demanded. They accuse you of not understanding them, even after you sacrificed yourself trying to. Because users don't feel gratitude, they feel entitlement. And the moment you stop being the emotional well they drink from, they feel deprived. So they start searching for their next source. And if you confront them, they flip the narrative instantly. Suddenly you become insensitive. Suddenly you are the problem. Suddenly you are the one who changed. They weaponize your empathy against you. The very empathy they sought from the beginning. That is the final stage of emotional exploitation. When you realize that everything you offered was taken for granted, and nothing you needed was ever truly seen. But there is one more stage, the most important one, the one that determines what kind of person you become after this, and that is the conclusion. There comes a moment in every emotionally one-sided relationship when your mind whispers the truth. You've been avoiding. If I stay here, I will lose myself. This realization usually doesn't arrive in a loud, dramatic way. It comes quietly, the same way emotional users operate. It shows up in the smallest moments, when you hear your phone buzz and feel dread instead of warmth, when you replay the conversation you just had and realize your needs were once again dismissed, when you look at them and notice, for the first time, that they are paying attention not to you, but to what they can get from you. Emotional users don't panic when they sense you pulling away. They panic when they sense they're losing control. So they do what they always do. They shift, adapt, transform. They suddenly offer affection they withheld. They suddenly act supportive. They suddenly understand. But it's not growth. It's strategy. A temporary performance meant to keep the flow of emotional supply alive. This is where most people fall back into the trap. Not because they're weak, but because they're hopeful. Because they believe maybe this time the kindness is real. Maybe this time the apology means something. Maybe this time they actually see your worth. But emotional users don't see your worth. They see your usefulness. And once you understand that, the entire illusion collapses. You begin noticing the patterns behind their words. You notice how their affection always appears when they need something. You notice how their anger always disappears once you give in. You notice how their regret only shows up when they fear losing access to you. And then the most important shift happens. You stop blaming yourself. Emotional users survive on your self-doubt. They thrive when you believe you're too sensitive, too demanding, or too emotional. They feed on the idea that you should be grateful for the little they offer, even though you give them everything. But the moment you see the manipulation for what it is, you strip them of the one weapon they rely on, your confusion. When you know what they're doing, their methods lose their power. You stop reacting to their guilt traps. You stop explaining yourself to someone who never listens. You stop rescuing someone who only shows up when they're drowning by choice. You begin to detach. And emotional users cannot survive detachment, because once your emotions stop being available to them, they have nothing left to take. When you stop filling the silence, they feel empty. When you stop calming their storms, they face the mess they created. When you stop bleeding empathy, they lose the illusion of being cared for. This is how you reclaim your power, not through confrontation, not through dramatic exits, but through quiet clarity. You walk away internally before you ever walk away physically. You rebuild the parts of yourself that were drained. You reconnect with the people who give without taking. You relearn how to receive kindness without immediately wondering what the other person wants. And slowly, something remarkable happens. You return to yourself. Emotional users don't destroy your life in one catastrophic moment. They drain you one emotion at a time. And healing is the same. Small moments of strength, consistency, and awareness. Eventually, you'll look back at this chapter and understand that they never loved you in the way you hoped. They needed you, but you no longer need to be needed in that way. You're building a life where your emotions are not currency, where your empathy is not a weakness, where your heart is not a resource to be mined. A life where you're surrounded by people who don't use your emotions, but honor them. And that is the real ending. Not revenge, not confrontation, but freedom.